And now, the general weather around Alaska.
Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service in Alaska region on this first day of February 2025. And we're going to jump right into things. Still a fair amount to talk about. We have Arctic high pressure that is going to be anchoring itself over northwestern Canada and just kind of sit there for not just the rest of this weekend, but through the upcoming week. So that means seasonably cold temperatures across the eastern interior into the Panhandle, with some outflow winds that have been happening, especially this afternoon across areas of the Panhandle, making for very cold wind chills, even though skies are clear. But what this does is that we have a storm track now that's further west, coming up out of the North Pacific across the Aleutians, especially western half of the Bering, up along eastern Russia, and then the frontal systems brush the west coast. So that is where the more active weather will be here for the next week plus. And when we have this kind of pattern, then it leads to above normal temperatures and precipitation through areas of the Aleutians and especially along the west coast, with colder, drier conditions over the southeast mainland into the Panhandle. And looking at what we got going on as of this Saturday afternoon, Wales, Bering Strait, some light snow and fog, 32 degrees. We've had temperatures as warm as 34 up there at Shishmaref, so we've had temperatures there or a bit above freezing all the way up there in, past the Bering Strait. Meanwhile, further south in the Aleutians, some light rain and fog. Last weekend, Dutch Harbor, Unalaska got blasted with a blizzard on Saturday into Saturday night, Sunday morning, 1 to 2 feet of snow. This weekend, milder conditions. You can still see some of that snow, especially up along the middle and higher elevations of the surrounding mountains. Temperature there, Dutch Harbor 41 degrees. Now, the coldest temperature in the state this Saturday morning occurred Arctic Village, at least of the reports I saw, 46 below zero. There's some higher mid-level overcast coming in this Saturday afternoon, mostly cloudy now, 26 below. And that's actually being touched off by what was once a front that pushed in through the west and northwestern areas of the mainland. Still bringing some snow, though, to areas around Fairbanks. Going to pick up some snow here through tonight and early Sunday morning. So Berners Bay there, north of Juneau, along Lynn Canal. Notice the chop. We have those brisk northeasterly outflow winds. Temperature only 17 degrees despite the clear skies. So the Panhandle will enjoy plenty of sunshine, but it's going to be a cold one here for the weekend, and lingering cold temperatures in the upcoming week. If you step outside tonight around and after sunset, you get a chance to see a conjunction of the planet Venus and the waxing crescent moon, and that'll be visible in the southwestern sky. And if you pay attention, look below, as it gets a little darker, you'll see what appears to be a star that kind of has more of a yellowish orange appearance, because Venus has this very bright white, looks like just this brilliant star. Saturn, the planet Saturn, will be below the moon and Venus then. So kind of a neat thing to see. I noted that the past couple of nights, but tonight we'll find a close conjunction there of Venus and the waxing crescent moon. As far as advisories, we have some winter weather advisories for the hills areas above Fairbanks up through Anatuvik, Adigan passes, some light snow and blowing snow. That's what was left of a frontal system pushing eastward across the northern half of the mainland. That's in the process of washing out, but it still has enough moisture to produce these areas of light snow and blowing snow. Further west, we have winter weather advisories along the Chukchi coast in the vicinity of Wainwright down through Point Lay. This is a blizzard warning, though that isn't going to happen. That doesn't go into effect until 9 a.m. Sunday morning. It'll carry over into Monday for Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, as winds here are going to be picking up on Sunday. And we also have that winter storm watch for areas of the Seward coastline. But that, again, that winter storm watch is for Sunday into Monday. We still have winter weather advisories for some light snow and blowing snow, Wales down to Nome. But as I showed you, temperatures are right around freezing, so not a whole lot of blowing and drifting going on with that. And then we have brisk winds, the special weather statement here for the lower Yukon there, the Yukon Delta, for some strong gusty winds. But again, temperatures there are also a bit above freezing. Now back here Across south central Valdez, Thompson Pass, there is a cold weather advisory, then a bunch of cold weather advisories, at least through this evening. Some of these are into Sunday for the southern parts of the Panhandle, and an extreme cold warning up here, Skagway and up there toward Chilkoot White Passes because of the very cold temperatures and drainage winds causing some very cold wind chills. But the main thing is that here in the Panhandle, with the high pressure that's building up here, northwestern Canada, that increases the pressure gradient, the outflow winds coming through all these channels and mountains. So that's just funneling that cold air that's built up over northwest Canada right across the Panhandle. And this kind of pattern is going to be holding as we go into at least through early next week, even though the high is still going to be there as we go through the entire week. And this is a special weather statement just for some brisk winds along the lower Yukon Delta coast there. Again, this is going to be the region of more active weather as we go through the week ahead into next weekend, and occasionally we're going to have wind and rain pulling across the Aleutians as well. So on the satellite imagery today, we have one low that's parting, pushing southeast of Haida Gwaii toward Vancouver Island. Notice the popcorn appearance, the clouds here, those are scattered rain and snow showers. Back up here, though, the colder air coming in as high pressure builds over the Yukon and settles a little further east and southeast. We're going to have this high, 1050 plus high, just sitting in this location. The core of the coldest Arctic air will be out over northwestern Canada, but still areas of the eastern interior and down in the Panhandle are going to experience below normal temperatures. Back to the west, though, the feed of moisture coming in off the North Pacific into the Bering keeps the frontal systems active. We don't have one in particular that's super strong at this point, not like some of the storms we've seen in the recent past, but nevertheless, that's where the active weather will be. So we have the one low just skirting toward, going to be located off the Washington coast. Here's that Arctic high. Now, what's interesting about this is this Arctic high is a surface high pressure system. It has very cold air with it. The pressure builds up. It's going to be building above 1050 millibars. Meanwhile, we have a strong mid and upper level high pressure ridge over the southwest mainland in this position. And the surface reflection of that high, not as strong as the Arctic high, but 1036 millibars. This is more of a warm weather feature. This is more of like the kind of mid and upper level high we get in the summertime that brings the really dry and hot weather, especially to the Panhandle. That feature is here. That's what brought the really mild weather prior to the last storm before last weekend. So now we have this stationary front that's kind of the boundary by which weather systems are coming out of the North Pacific, working their way either up through the western Bering or along eastern Asia coast, with the fronts then extending eastward and brushing the west coast and coming across the Aleutians. So we have one of these fronts that have already come inland, bringing milder air, and that's what's touched off the snow and blowing snow around areas of the Brooks Range, Anatuvik, Adigan Pass down into the hills outside north of Fairbanks. And then we continue to have gusty winds and some light snow, blowing snow along areas of the west and northwest coast. So as we get into the day, starting late tonight, early Sunday morning, notice the high building to 1054 millibars. This low here scoots a little further southeastward, just off the Vancouver Island coastline. That high stays in place. This is the mid-upper level warm high pressure. The warm air isn't at the surface, it's aloft. And then back here, southerly flow across the Aleutians and much of the Bering with the list. This low is going to take a track northeastward, so that on Sunday, this front comes eastward, just enhances the southerly flow ahead of it. That's why there's the brisk wind advisory for the lower Yukon Delta, because it's just going to keep those south winds and temperatures above freezing going. High pressure over northwest Canada. It's going to be here all this coming week, 1051 millibars. And then on Monday, maybe slightly lower, 1049, 1050 millibars, but still in the same place, still those northeast, easterly, offshore outflow winds in the Panhandle. Quiet weather, southern central interior. This area, you have a temperature inversion. So you may notice if you're using a fire and the smoke coming out of the chimneys settling into the valleys here, not a whole lot to disturb the very strong low-level temperature inversion over these areas of the state, especially if you're nestled in a little holler or valley. And back to the west, the initial front washing up, but it's going to bring more moisture. There's going to be another low come up out of here. And so again, we expect some gusty winds and an enhancement to potentially some blizzard conditions here up around Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. And looking at temperatures for Sunday morning, not as cold, Yukon Flats, Arctic Village, not 46 below, but maybe 26 below or so, with the areas also down here. Copper River Basin, some 25, maybe near 30 below in a few spots. But notice the cold here. 5 above Juneau, 4 down there toward Petersburg and Wrangell, 0 or little below 0 as you get around and above Skagway. Back to the west, temperatures are not going to fall even below freezing at Nome. Just kind of holding steady there or just a degree or so above it. Same thing at Savunga. So we go down along the Aleutians, temperatures are going to be even around 40 at Dutch Harbor. For Sunday afternoon, we find sub-zero readings still where the cold air lingers along the Alcan border here, Yukon Flats, parts of the Copper River Basin, maybe the very upper Tanana Valley. Highs only in the teens, northern Panhandle, but everybody here in the Panhandle below freezing. Bright blue sky, breezy outflow winds. Back to the west, southerly flow, temperatures at least mid-30s here along the west coast. 34, 35 degrees being very common from Shishmaref down along the Bering Strait to the lower Yukon coast, with some lower 40s as you trail out along the Alaska Peninsula back toward the Aleutians. And then Monday morning lows, notice not quite as cold. Still some sub-zero readings though, because again, with this strong Arctic high sitting over this region, the rest of this weekend and the next week, there will be some modification to the temperatures here, but the slowest, that cold air is just going to stay in these valleys and low spots. So again, that's where you'll find the sub-zero readings, maybe readings coming up a little bit Monday morning. Lows higher single digits to lower teens, but even along the west coast, still near freezing for a low at Savunga, Nome down toward Makoriak. And then temperatures on Monday, have the high still over here, teens and 20s across the Panhandle, at least coming up to near or still a little below 0 Yukon Flats. And then back here along the west coast, we're looking at temperatures a few degrees above freezing. And we're going to have a couple other disturbances riding northward. So you're going to get brushed with some snow, blowing snow, maybe even a little bit of mix of rain coming into play. So how is this pattern going to change much coming up here through the first full week of February 7th through the 11th? Once we get past this upcoming week, we're still looking at below normal temperatures centered over southeast Alaska, over the Panhandle, because again, this general high pressure feature is just going to sit right here over Canada for better than a week. And then back to the west, it opens the door for systems coming out of the North Pacific and generally tracking upward across the Bering up toward eastern Russia, with the fronts then brushing the west coast. So that's going to allow some warmer air to come in. Some of the areas here of the southwest, lower Yukon, Kuskokwim areas are going to see snow or maybe even just plain old rain just because of the milder temperatures. And there's potential for a little stronger storm, a little more moisture by early next week, not this coming week, but the following week, to push across areas of the southwest. So we'll have to wait and see. But again, with this pattern, we have the high to the east, drier, cooler and drier conditions. So we're not expecting much in the way of above normal precipitation at all here. Southeast mainland, drier weather through the Panhandle, but along the west coast with the storm track coming in up out of the North Pacific across the Bering. Areas of the west coast, especially the western Seward Peninsula, the lower Yukon Delta coast, have the best chance of seeing above normal precipitation here, centered on February 7th through the 11th.